Thanks so much. Welcome everybody to the chat and to the virtual event that we have planned for today. As Ben said, my name is CJ Gomolka. I'm a professor in global French studies, and I'm also the coordinator of global languages here at DePaul. So first of all, congratulations on your acceptance. We're all really excited to have you with us in the fall. One of the things that brought us here today is languages at DePaul, specifically global language programs. And we're going to be talking a little bit today about the things that we have to offer for students in global languages. And then we'll also have a little bit of information given to you about the placement test that you'll need to take to choose your classes. We'll talk a little bit about language placement, course selection, and why you should take global languages at DePaul just generally. So I'm going to share, you already see on your screen, I have a PowerPoint that I'm sharing with you. So let's go ahead and get started. So just give you a little bit of overview about what we're going to talk about today, so the parts of this session. And then after I'm finished, I'm more than happy to take questions about anything that you might have. So first thing we'll talk about is what to expect in language courses. We have lots of great courses that we're offering in the fall semester and in the spring semester in global languages. We'll talk about what languages we offer. And I just want to give you a little bit of information about what you can expect in those classes. We'll talk about majors and minors in global languages. We'll talk about some of the on-campus experiential learning opportunities that DePaul offers to its students. We'll talk about some of the off-campus summer programs that we offer in languages, some short and long-term off-campus study opportunities, talk about the language requirement, and then we'll talk about placement exams and course selection. So let's start with just a little bit about what to expect in global language courses. So first of all of our courses are incredibly interdisciplinary. What that means is that when you take a global language studies course at DePaul, regardless of which language you're taking it in, you're gonna find that you're in a classroom that explores multiple disciplines at the same time. So courses in global language studies interweave language study, global awareness, and multiple disciplines. To give you some examples, we have courses in global languages that investigate questions, topics in gender and sexuality studies, immigration studies, urban studies, history, philosophy, literature, film studies. There's really something for everybody, and we're sure that any student that comes to DePaul will find a home in a language that is interdisciplinary and that links to their course of study. Also with global language courses, we are looking at critical engagement with global issues. So in our courses, we provide students with the tools to critically engage with conversations happening now and throughout history on literature, media, politics, education, linguistics, identity, immigration, global relations, and lots of other different topics. In line with DePaul's mission statement, we are looking to produce globally, culturally aware global citizens. So courses in global languages provide you with opportunities to see the world differently, both inside and outside the classroom. We'll talk a little bit about the outside of the classroom component in a little bit. And then to use those opportunities to make your mark on the world. So our desire is to have you go out into the world after you're done with our courses and really put your stake in it. Global language courses also not just about language. However, we do offer most of our courses in the target language, whether that's French, German, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Latin, Greek. We also offer numerous courses that are cross-listed in English or cross-listed with other departments and programs. Those courses, however, are not, do not count towards the language requirements. So we'll talk about that in a second. So what majors and minors do we offer in global languages? We offer majors in the following languages. So we have Global French Studies, which is my home program, Italian Cultural Studies, German Studies, Hispanic Studies, Chinese Studies, Japanese Studies, and then we also have a Romance Languages major, which combines either French or Spanish, and with a minor in French, Spanish, or Italian. We also offer minors in Latin and Ancient Greek. Additionally, to give you some ideas about some on-campus experiential learning opportunities that are housed within global languages. So we have the DePaul Language House, which was founded in 2016. It used to be actually a self-standing house on campus. Now it's actually housed in Rector Village, which is a really nice dorm on campus that has single units and a shared kitchen, a shared living space. So this space is, the DePaul Language House is specifically for students who are interested in learning, living with other students who are learning languages and that are interested in languages and cultures. It's a really great opportunity to be with students that are like-minded in the sense that they enjoy learning about other cultures. And what's specific about the Language House is that it's, we ask students to sign a language contract to only speak the language that they're studying while they're in the house. So you're usually housed with 2 or 3 other people learning the same language as you. gives you the opportunity to practice the language outside of the classroom. And there's oftentimes special opportunities given to students living in the house, parties, specific events, directly linked to languages. So this year we have 18 students representing 6 different languages and cultures living in the house. We had over 52 applications this year for the house. It's actually a very popular residential opportunity because it's a mix of living and learning at the same time, which we're really excited about. Language tables are offered once a week in every different language that we offer at DePaul. That's an opportunity for you to come together with other language learners and practice the language during the lunch hour. Sometimes they're also at 4 o'clock. We also have film series, game nights, and other special events that happen, all in the vein of trying to get you to practice the language, outside of the classroom, but also to build a sense of community amongst language learners at DePaul. We also have 2 really exciting off-campus summer programs for those of you that would like to study abroad, but don't necessarily have the time to study abroad for an entire semester or prefer a shorter term engagement with study abroad. We have the DePaul and Nice, France summer program, which is actually a program that I co-direct. So this is in Nice, France. You stay with the host family for 4 weeks, lots of different excursions to adjacent villages and towns in the south of France. And you also take a class that counts towards the major, the minor, or it can also count towards the global learning obligation at DePaul. There's also a summer in Italy program that's very similar. It's an 8-week program, also staying with the host family. I provided the websites here for you. You're more than welcome to look at those in your own time. A lot of these websites, both these websites have videos that were made by students that went on the program. They give you plenty of information about how exciting both of these programs are. And if you have any questions about either of these programs, you can either email me directly if you're looking, if you're interested in going on on the French program. If you're interested in going on the Italian program, you could always email the Director of Italian Studies, and I'll provide that information for you at the end of the presentation. We also offer off-campus study abroad, as you're probably aware. So DePaul is great in the sense that there's lots of different opportunities to study abroad, whether it's short-term or sort of a longer-term semester study or a winter or a May term. There are 45 different countries that DePaul travels to during these programs. Over 100 different programs on 6 different continents, which is actually pretty amazing when you think about it. There are semester-long study abroad programs in the fall and in the spring. There are also winter and May term opportunities, which I'm sure you'll hear more about in another session. These are 3 weeks long. I did one this past year, actually, to France. We took students to France. We did a spatial tour of the country. We looked at the way that space and place influence the way that you think about identity and citizenship. So we went to Paris, we went to Bordeaux, and we went to Strasbourg, and we looked at the way that those cities image the idea of citizenship in different ways. The pictures that you're seeing on the right-hand side are actually from trips that I took with students on winter terms. So 2 years ago, I went on a winter term with a Spanish colleague. We took students from Spain into Morocco. So the top left picture is a picture of Chefchaouen, which is a city in Morocco. On the right, you have a city in Spain. And then on the bottom, you also have a city in Spain. These winter term trips are fantastic and a great way to get to know your professors, and also a great way to experience the world in a shorter term and with a very focused topic. So you see on the bottom of the slide, I just provided you with some of the recent winter and May term trips that Global Languages has done. So Spain and Morocco, France and Morocco. Professors have taken students to Vietnam, Japan, Italy, Tahiti, New Caledonia. These are really exciting opportunities, and you'll hear more about the 2 winter or May term extended studies that you'll be doing in other presentations. But just know that Global Languages offers some really interesting ones. So let's talk a little bit about the global language requirement. So a lot of this information is also on a website, which I'll provide to you in a second. So you're more than welcome to go into that website and check out this information there if you prefer to read it. There's also some links on that website that we'll talk about that take you to things like the placement test, and also the email addresses of some of the directors of the language programs that you can contact if you have any questions. So the global language requirement, we'll talk about it as the global language possibility rather than an obligation. It's really an opportunity for you to learn about the exciting things that we're doing in our language courses at DePaul, and also a way for you to think about the way your education can look more global. So it's an opportunity to take 2 semesters of a language, either a language that you've already studied before, and we'll talk about what you should do if you're deciding to take a language you've already studied, or you can start a completely new language at DePaul amongst the ones that we offer. So anyone whose first language is English, domestic students, should take 2 semesters of language study, beginning at an appropriate level based on the placement test and or in consultation with the coordinator of the language program that you choose. So there's 2 ways to complete this requirement. You can either complete it with a language that you've studied previously. So let's say in high school, you took Spanish and you really enjoy Spanish and you want to continue with it. You can do that. You will take the placement test, you'll get a score, and then that score will determine which class you should sign up for. We'll talk about that in a second. Or if you'd rather, you could also just begin a new language at the first semester level. And I'll show you some of the courses that are offered at the first semester level if that's what you're interested in. You can also take 1 semester of the language in an off-campus program with the approval of the relevant language coordinator. So if you think that you'd rather start a language off-campus, you can do that. You would just need to make sure that you contact the appropriate language director, explain to them why you'd like to do that, get it approved before you do it, and then that could count towards the 2 semesters, one of the 2 semesters of language study, or you could take 1 semester on campus and go off for the second. Or you can just take both on campus. That's perfectly fine as well, obviously. So if you are an international student whose first language is not English, you may be certified as meeting the language requirement through the Office of the Registrar and in consultation with the Director of English for Academic Purposes. And the language requirement does not apply to School of Music students pursuing a 4-year School of Music degree. Anybody else it does apply to. So if you decide that you'd like to start a new language at DePaul, here is a list of the classes that you can sign up for. These classes are also on a website that I'll show you in a second that talks a little bit more about the placement test and course selection. So if you don't have time to jot them down now, you can always refer to the website that I'll show you in a second. But if you are starting a new language, so these are the courses that you would look for in the schedule of classes when you're signing up for classes for the fall. Again, we have Chinese, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Latin, Japanese, and Greek. One thing of note is that if you are thinking about majoring or minoring, just remember that Latin and Greek offer minors, but they do not offer majors. Chinese, French, German, Italian, Spanish, and Japanese all offer majors. So once again, if you took a language in high school and you want to start a new one, this list would be for you. You would just choose between one of these. If you decide, however, that you'd like to continue with a language that you've already studied, there are a couple of different steps to go through in order to decide which course to take. So the first step would be to take the placement test. So this is a link. The link for the placement test can be found on this website. I will just really quickly stop this share and I'll share with you the website itself so that we can look at that together. Give me 1 second and we'll do that. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, so on this website, this is the language requirement and placement website. So you'll see that a lot of the information on here is things that I've already mentioned. So information about the language requirement itself is at the top. General placement information, including that course list of for first year students. So if you're looking to start a new language, you can click on this link right here in blue and it will take you to what I just showed you, the list of courses that you would take if you're starting a new language. If you scroll down, it gives you some information about placement procedures by language. But the placement test is right down here. So if we're looking at Chinese, French, German, Italian, and Spanish, here are some of the first year classes that you can sign up for. But if you need to take the placement test, you'll click on this link and it'll direct you to our third-party testing site where you can take the placement test. So the placement test, just to give you a sense of what you'll be encountering when you take the placement test, it's mostly, there's no oral portion of the test, it's mostly grammar and vocabulary based. It is an online test, which means it's not proctored. And so one thing that I would mention about academic honesty is because you're taking the test online and you're not being proctored, obviously, we want to let you know that using online resources should be avoided for several reasons. One, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? We want to know about your language level to correctly place you in the best course. It does you no good to try to place lower into a course for several reasons. One is that the background of languages that you might have had in high school will indicate whether or not you can be in a certain course. And so taking the placement test and trying to score lower, is not a good idea. We want you to be in a course where you're going to feel comfortable with your language level, one, and we want you to be in a course where you're going to flourish, obviously, in the language. We want to be challenged, right? You're at a university to be challenged intellectually, and so when you're taking the online test, do your best, right? You want to be in that course that is at an appropriate level for you. So it's about a 15 to 20 minute test, although some people finish it in a little bit less than that. But take your time. Like I said, take your time and just complete it so that you get a correct placement to make sure that you're in the correct course for the fall. So step 2, after you've taken the placement test, at the very end, you'll receive a score. And that score will provide you with information that is linked to courses that you can sign up for in the fall. So it's a score between 0 and I believe up to about 700. And then there's certain ranges that are linked to a specific level of course at DePaul. So what you'll do is once you get your score, you can go back to that website that I just showed you, and I'll show it to you really quickly again. And there are, underneath of the individual languages, right here, underneath the additional information for, let's say, Chinese or for French or for German, you'll see things that say French placement guide, or down here, Spanish placement guide. You'll click on that link and it will match up your score with the appropriate course that you should sign up for in the fall. For certain languages, the directors prefer that you email them directly your score, and then they will converse with you about the course that you should take. So if it is the case that you don't see a placement guide under one of these languages, you'll see that it says email your score to a certain professor who will provide guidance about your placement. So if you take the test and you write down your score and then you forget your score, that's perfectly fine. Once you have an account in the placement test, on the placement test website, you can always sign back in and get your score. Or if you can't remember, let's say, your sign-in information or your password, that's okay as well. You can email our Global Languages Administrative Assistant, Heidi Menzel, and she can access your score at any time should you forget it. So once you have your score and once you know the course that is appropriate for that score, you'd want to sign up for that appropriate course. Again, if you're unsure about anything, the score, the courses, or if you just want more information about the course that you might be signing up for, please email one of the language directors, either myself, if you're thinking about taking a course in Global French Studies, or the appropriate language director of the language that you might be taking. We're more than happy also to provide you with information about the topics of courses. So for instance, let's say you test into the 200 level in Global French Studies. There may be more than one 200 level course that's being offered. And you might want some supplemental information about what that course is going to be about, what types of books are going to be involved, what you might expect in the course. Feel free to email us and we can give you that information. One question that often comes up is, should I start this GL language course 2-semester sequence my first year? So should you, as first-year students, start right away with your global language course sequence, the 2 courses, the 2 semesters of language? So I would say the short answer is yes. And there's a couple reasons why. One, over the course of the first year that you're at DePaul, you're going to be making some really great relationships with your professors. And for those of you that are thinking about maybe having an internship abroad at some point, or you may want to study abroad at some point, or you're interested in maybe working abroad at some point. These are valuable relationships that you can start right off the bat with global language professors. And we are excited to be able to help plan out any type of off-campus experience that you think you might want to have. So starting that first semester, that first year, first year is a really great way to get to know your global language professors, to think about what you might want to do off-campus, study abroad later on in your education. And having that connection right away is something that's really great. The second reason is, language is not always easy for everybody. Some people find learning languages easier than others. Our classes can be challenging because we're not just learning about language, we're also putting language in conversation with really interesting topics. And so you're learning, let's say, for instance, I teach a course, it's sort of like an intro to gender and sexuality studies in global French studies. You're learning about how to talk about gender and sexuality in the target language, which can be challenging, right? So sometimes it's a good idea to start those challenging courses right away so that you're not in 2, 3, 4 challenging courses your junior or your senior year. Another reason to start classes in global languages early is that, as I mentioned, our classes are incredibly interdisciplinary, and a lot of students find that after taking one of our courses that they become interested in things like film studies, or they become interested in things like political science or women, gender, and sexuality studies. And if you're in the courses from the very beginning, you can get that information, you can find that interest, and then afterwards you can go on and explore that interest in other classes. So 3 reasons why it would be a good idea, in my opinion, to start early, this 2-semester opportunity. And then lastly, I'll just give you some context before I take any questions that you might have. So as I mentioned, here at DePaul in global languages, we're excited to meet all of you as future global language students. And we're also here to you already may be interested in thinking about study abroad or internship opportunities abroad, get that stuff planned out early. And we're more than happy to help you plan out those opportunities from the very beginning, even in the summer before you even get to DePaul. So if you're interested in chatting with us about our classes or about study abroad opportunities or about internship opportunities, I'm providing you here with the contacts for the different languages. You have Chinese studies, global French studies, German studies, Italian cultural studies. Hispanic studies is slightly different as it's a larger program. So if your last name begins with A through L, you would email one professor. M through Z would email another. Ancient Greek, Japanese studies, Latin studies. And then while I am a professor of global French studies as coordinator of global languages here at DePaul, I'm also here to answer any questions that you have. So if you don't feel, now that you've seen my face, right? So now we feel a little bit more comfortable, perhaps because you've seen my face and you've heard me speak. So if you feel more comfortable emailing me first rather than emailing one of the directors of the language programs, I'd be more than happy to see if I can answer your question. If I think it's a specific question, I'm more than happy to send you along to one of the language directors. So I will end there. I don't want to, we're not doing a lecture here, right? So I don't want to take up too much of your time as far as providing you with information, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I'll open it up if there are any questions.
Thank you, CJ. All right, everyone, it looks like we have a few questions coming in the chat. Today's session is recorded, so the links and everything included will be sent back to you. I included in here earlier a link so you can directly find that language placement site on the DePaul webpage. But CJ, it looks like our first question we have, just for clarification, is the placement test only for students who would like to continue with a particular language?
Yeah, so if you've taken a language before, you can take the placement test. If you are starting with a new language, there's no reason to take the placement test, right? So let's say if you took Spanish in high school and you want to take French, or if you took Italian in high school and you're interested in learning Spanish, the list of 100 level courses would be where you would start. So I'll just share that with you really quickly again. Right here. So this slide right here, which is also on the page, there's a link on the page for the placement test that you can access this. If you are starting a new language from scratch, you've never taken it before, you have no basic experience with the language, these are the courses that you'd want to sign up for. If you are continuing with the language, then yes, you would take the placement test regardless of how much experience you have. So let's say you only took 1 year of Spanish in high school. You don't really feel like you have a good grasp even at an elementary level, but you want to continue with Spanish. You would then take the placement test. You would get a score. Don't worry if your score is 0. we have lots of students that have taken languages before, even a year of language, and they score a 0 or a 10 on the test. That's perfectly fine. In fact, that's a great opportunity for you to take our elementary courses and see how we actually do languages fairly differently than maybe what you've experienced in high school. They're very interactive, they're very experiential. So yes, the short answer to the question is if you've taken a language before, regardless of how much experience you have, and even if it's just a little bit of language experience in that language, and you want to continue with that language, then yes, you would take the placement test. If you want to start a completely new language, there's no reason for you to take the placement test. You can just sign up for one of these 100 level courses. One sort of word of caution is at the 100 level in all languages, there is a 100 level 2-semester sequence, which is for students that have never taken languages before. And then there's also a 100 level class for students that have 2 years or more of a language. If you have had 2 years or more of a language, you should take the placement test, like I just mentioned. And there's a specific course for those students. But if you have no experience with the language, there's these 100 level courses, which you see on your screen right now. If you have some experience, regardless of how much experience that is, then you should take the placement test. You'll get a score. And once you get that score, you can use that score to determine which class is most appropriate for you.
Thank you, CJ. There's another question coming through. Are bilingual students allowed to take a language course in their second language?
It depends on which language you're talking about. So we have some restrictions. If you are bilingual, let's say in Spanish, there is a Heritage Learners Program track sort of in the Hispanic Studies program. And I would direct anyone that's interested in that to email the Director of Hispanic Studies. If, let's say, you're bilingual in French and English, you certainly, and we encourage you to continue with your language study. We do not, however, allow students who have a good grasp on language, meaning that they're bilingual, to start at anything under the 300 level. So if you, let's say you speak French at home, and you want to take a French course, you absolutely can, and we would love to have you in our courses. But you would then start at the 300 level because we want to make sure that everybody is at an appropriate level in every class. We want to make sure that the language functions properly in every class. I would say that if you're unsure, just email the language director. They may ask you to take the placement test just to gauge your level. But you absolutely can take a language class if you are bilingual, and we certainly encourage it. Yeah.
Awesome. There's some private messages coming through, so I'm getting through those. A lot of similar questions around, is the 2-semester requirement for the same language, or is it possible to take one language and then a second language on a different semester?
That's a really good question. Yeah, no, the requirement is to take 2 consecutive semesters of the same language. However, consecutive in the sense that meaning the same language. They don't have to be fall and spring semester. It could be that you take one course in the fall semester of your first year, and then one course the first semester of your sophomore year. I wouldn't recommend that because, especially if you're starting with a new language, it's always a good idea to take the courses back to back. So that you don't lose what you learn. But you certainly can take more than one language, obviously, but the requirement itself is 2 semesters of the same language. Yeah.
Perfect. And then kind of a refresher for the group, a reminder of when do the placement tests open, when they go live for incoming students?
So you can take the placement test at any time. It's just a link to a website. I believe you need your email address, and I believe you need your student ID. So if you don't have your student ID yet, I don't think you can take it. But once you get your student ID and your email address, you just click on that link. The link, in fact, I can, let's see if I can really quickly, I can just show you what it looks like. So you click on the link, and it'll take you to the homepage of the testing site. Mine's a little slow. So you'll see here you have your first name, last name, the email address. You'll use your DePaul email address, your student ID. You'll make you'll make a password. I'm sorry. you'll confirm the password, and you'll create an account. And then once you get through this page, it'll ask you which language you are looking to test for. You click on the language, whether it's French, German, Italian, Spanish, and then you just go through the test, and it'll give you a score. I will note that I believe that with Latin and Ancient Greek, you can't take the test. There is no test on here. For those languages, you would contact directly, and I believe it's written here on the site. You would contact directly the director of the program. So for instance, with Ancient Greek, it's Professor James Wells, and you would converse with him. You have a dialogue over email, and he would evaluate that if you're looking at Ancient Greek or Latin. Similarly with other languages, so you should read before you go on the placement test and take it. Make sure you go to this language requirement and placement page. Go to the language that you're thinking about starting either in the fall or your second year, and make sure that the language has a placement test first. It says right here on this page whether it is. So for instance, another one, Japanese, you see right here, there is no written placement test for Japanese. So if you've studied it before, you can use this placement guide right here. It provides you with, I think, some characters to look at, and it tells you if you understand these characters, you should sign up for this course. But again, if you've never taken the language before, you're just gonna go to this link up here, course for first year students, that provides you with the 100 level courses that you would sign up for if you have no language experience. But you can, as long as you have a student ID, as long as you have an email address, you can take the placement test at your convenience, and then just keep that score, write down that score somewhere. We'll have a record of it anyway. If you were to lose it, like I said, we have a record of it. But that way you know which course to sign up for the fall. But you can take it at any time once you have your ID.
Perfect. And just I see a few questions coming in for those student IDs and that DePaul login info. I know we're continuing to update and work with IT and the help desk at DePaul. So I think in this next week and by June 1, we're going to be having the entire class bring on their DePaul email and the university ID. So some of you might be waiting to get that. For those of you that have received email and are using your DePaul email account, you can work with the admission office. You can also go on to DePaul eServices. There should have been a tutorial already sent out about getting those accounts set up. It's really easy to find your student ID once you get into your email or your DePaul eServices account. If not, you can reach out to the admission office directly, admission@depaul.edu, and we can put you in the right direction. There's other questions coming in privately about, is it possible to test out of the language if you score high on the placement test, and how does that credit process work?
So there is no testing out. Every student every domestic student that studies at DePaul is required to take 2 semesters of a language at the level of placement. So you take the placement test, you test into a course, and then you take 2 semesters of that language, or conversely, you start a new language and you take 2 semesters. But no, there's no testing out. And I would say that, we have some really exciting courses in languages. I think a lot of students are used to, and I certainly don't want to say that this is the way it is at your high school, but sometimes students, I know I was used to a very static language classroom with sort of rote activities, not very fun, not really about anything that was topical, contemporary, of interest. Our language classes at DePaul, I even hesitate to call them language classes because they're really content-based courses, interdisciplinary courses that are taught in a different language. We've actually worked tirelessly over the past 5 years to completely reinvent what it means to be in a language class at DePaul. And so I can just give you an example. I think I gave this before. At the 200 level, for instance, I teach a class that's called Sex, Gender, and Identity in Contemporary France. And this is a very topical course. We're looking at the way that gender is represented in France, the way that Francophone countries understand sexuality and gender, the way that power relations work in different Francophone countries based in sex and gender. These are really interesting topics, and it just so happens that they're also taught in the target language. At the 100 level, even though we are obviously working with simplistic phrasing, we're working with grammar, we're working with tenses to help you to be able to speak at an elementary level in the language. We're also at the same time providing you with opportunities to explore other areas, other disciplinary areas in English. So for instance, in my 100 level courses in Global French Studies, we're not just all the time talking about, I like this, I like that, my family is composed of. We're also talking about, for instance, the way that that trans individuals are working with the gendered nature of the French language to open up linguistic possibilities for gender affirmation. We're talking about the ways that the veil has been vilified in Francophone culture, and the ways that Islamophobia has been fomented in Francophone cultures. We're looking at politics. We're doing a lot of really exciting things. So I would just, I would hesitate to call it, to even think about testing out. You should be excited to test into this opportunity to be able to, explore what it means to learn a language differently.
Thank you, CJ. I'm looking through. That might be all the questions right now. We'll stick on a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop those in both the chat here or directly to CJ or myself.
I'll say this really quickly while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions. If you look behind me, I'm trying to figure out which way to turn because it's like not mirrored, but right over here you go. So this is actually, I mentioned the Nice, France, the DePaul Nice, France summer program that I co-direct every year. This is actually where you could be next summer if you'd like to come with us. We offer courses that count towards the language requirement. So you can come with us and spend 4 weeks in the summer on the French Riviera, staying with a host family, learning about Francophone culture, learning about all the amazing things that, that France and Francophone countries have to offer. A selfless plug for the program that I co-direct. But
love it. That's awesome. I think we all wish we could be there right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've had any more questions come in. So for those of you, hang tight. If you're getting your account set up this week, or I think by June 1 at the latest, we're really trying to be in line with that decision deadline to have everyone's incoming university account set up. And once you have that, it's usually the same kind of login and password for almost everything at DePaul when it comes to accessing your email and this test placement and everything from there. So looks like there was, yeah.
I would also say too, if for whatever reason, there's no, I wouldn't, don't, be anxious about not being able to take the placement test if you don't have your student ID just yet, because remember, you are in many ways in control of your own academic destiny, right? When you decide for classes. So if you think that you want to take a language course starting in the fall, you can always carve out that slot. It's just, you can make sure that when you're looking at your classes for the fall, you can look at the classes that we offer in languages, see what time slots are available, and then leave that slot open in the event that you're placing into that class. A lot of students actually carve out one slot that first semester and then their second semester of their first year, knowing that they'd like to get that language started their first year. So even if you don't know what level you will be placed in, unless you're starting a new language, then it'll be the 100 level. You can always leave a slot open out of your 4 courses that you'll be choosing between for a language class, just in case.
That's a great point. Well, it looks like that might do it. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, this will be recorded. Here to help if you need anything at all. I'll drop in my email real quick in here into the chat. If any questions come up, be on the lookout. I think you'll probably get a message from me with the recording to this. Happy to help locate those accounts and also steer you in the right direction as well.
I can also,
CJ, thank you so much for your time.
I can send you the PowerPoint just so you can send it to them if they'd like it. I also have a little brochure too that could be sent as well.
That would be perfect. No, we can coordinate that and expect more heading your way. But congratulations, everyone. We hope you're excited. We found today's session helpful and can't wait to see you hopefully this fall.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thanks. Bye.